I have to come after him? When I worked at the Mental Health Association in Garland County, one of the things I learned was that when you work with the severely and chronically mentally ill, very often a little bit of really profound insight, or maybe it's just common sense, is thrown into those sometimes incoherent conversations. And I learned to listen for those. So when I became the drug study coordinator for a mental health treatment center here in Little Rock, I was very careful to listen to those. And I met a man named Cameron. And Cameron was in the program because he had broken the law, and most of the people who were in the program were there for this reason. He had broken the law, and instead of them sending him to jail, they sent him to treatment because he had a mental illness. And Cameron and all the others who were there had started out. Ours was the 5th level of a treatment program, and they had started out at a lockdown, and they only got to move to the next level when they performed whatever they had to do to get to the next step. By the time they got to us, it was a community treatment program, and most of them lived in the community. Some of them worked, but most of them didn't. They lived in the community, but they were very carefully supervised. And the mental health workers would go and give them their medication, watch them take it, and then they were subject to the random drug treatments and all the other things that went with helping them stay on their medication and staying to some degree sane. Cameron was a very interesting person. He could not read or write, but he was not stupid. He was from a very deprived, really poor background, and he just never had any education. So he told me that he wanted to be in the drug study I was doing on a new drug for schizophrenia. And he did it partially because there was a small stipend, and the other reason was he liked me. And I really liked him. We got along very well. So over the next few weeks, I spent a lot of time with him. We met twice a week and talked about his drug and what his side effects were and what progress he was making. And then once a month, I took him to a hospital because getting an EKG was part of the drug study. So I took him for that. We spent a lot of time together. And Cameron was a very good storyteller. He liked to tell stories, and I liked to hear them. So one of the stories he told me was that he had fallen off a ladder and hit his head on a nail, which left a hole in his head. And through that hole, he got messages from the heavenlies, and he also got messages from the mafia. You see what that's setting up here. So we talked about that, and then one day he told me that he believed in reincarnation, which I thought was a pretty big word for somebody who was illiterate. He believed in reincarnation, and he was going to come back in the next life as a barn owl because they had to eat rats and other gross things, and he would be paying for the mistakes he had made in this life. But he said, I was going to come back as a butterfly, and I was flattered by that. So one day when we were talking, he said, I really would like to learn to read. I just want to learn to read 2 things. I want to read the newspaper and the Bible. And I said, okay, if my supervisors will approve it, I'll teach you to read. So I went to the library and took a refresher course with the Literacy Council because I'd taught literacy before. And I decided the material we would use would be the Laubach material because Frank Laubach was a Christian missionary, and he developed the material to help people learn to read the Bible, which was perfect. We started the stories, and we started reading in December, and he was very attentive. And the first story was the story about the angel Gabriel announcing to Mary that she was going to have a baby. The next story was about the angels that appeared on the hillside to the shepherds and sang, the choir of angels that sang, and told them where the baby Jesus was in Bethlehem and that they should go there. The next story was about the wise men that followed the star to find the baby Jesus. And the next story, before we started it, Cameron said, Nancy, I don't think we should continue with this material. I don't think we should read these stories anymore. And I said, why? And he said, well, when I tell Mary about the things I see and the voices I hear, she tells me I can't talk about those because they're not real, they're part of my illness. And if I keep talking about them, people will think I'm crazy. Well, duh. It had never occurred to me that there was a conflict here between the Bible stories and schizophrenia. So I went back to the library and I got some more material, and this time it was about cowboys. Well, Cameron didn't like those stories nearly as much, but he did learn to read on an elementary level. So I felt like we had made some progress. But my point here is that I think the very best mental health workers are those that see the sanity sometime in the most serious mental and chronic mental illness, the serious and chronic mental illness. Thank you.